Hi everyone, Phil here. Welcome back to the Sunderland SCFC YouTube channel. Something that I'm just going to be doing every week from now on is I'm going to sort of talk you through the latest news from the press conference, preview the game that's coming up, and just talk through all the key talking points really, and maybe make some predictions as well. Just being to see Mike Dodds ahead of a crucial game for Sunderland against QPR tomorrow. Obviously imperative that they bring an end to this losing run, and sort of, I don't think you could say they would send us into the national break with any positivity, because it's been such a sort of bruising couple of months to cover the club and follow the club. But at least if they can win, put some breathing space between themselves and sort of the lower end of the table, and with some key players potentially coming back after the international break, I think we'll be able to at least breathe a sigh of relief, if not look forward with a huge amount of positivity. So it feels like a really big game in the context of the break that's coming up, the table, and obviously the fact that Sunderland have lost 6 games. I have to say that the team news is not great. Sunderland's injury woes have not improved this week. They've actually got worse, to the point where you can now name a fairly strong 11 of players that are currently sidelined. Obviously, the new injuries this week are Jensen Seal. Mike Dodd spoke a bit about that injury today. A really strange one in that he played obviously 90 minutes against Southampton last weekend. Didn't report any issues until the next morning when his knee had basically completely swollen. Spoke to and went to see Sunderland's physio staff, obviously. And they could see pretty much straight away that it was a fairly big problem. He's been to see a specialist who's confirmed that he won't be able to play again this season. We still don't know exactly how long he's going to be out for, because he needs to go for some further consultation to see if he needs surgery. If he doesn't need surgery, that's the best case scenario, then he should be able to return for pre-season. That would obviously be a big boost for him and the club, because he'd then be able to push for the start of next year. If he does need surgery, and unfortunately that's still a possibility, then I think he probably will be ruled out for much of the rest of the calendar year, which would be a huge blow for such a young player who was just getting his chance, really. Another injury in Nazari Rusin. We're not entirely sure what the problem is there. He reported some discomfort after taking a knock towards the end of the Southampton game, and basically hasn't been able to train this week. So that's, I think he would have been pushing for a start, having come off the bench and impressed at Southampton. So that's another blow to Mike Dodds' plans. Dodds is hoping at the moment that he'll be back for those Easter weekend fixtures after the international break. But at the moment, they're still waiting for the full prognosis, so we can't be sure on that one. Slightly better news on a couple of fronts. One is that Dan Ballard hasn't been completely ruled out for tomorrow's game. Ballard obviously picked up a hamstring injury in the second half at Southampton. Sunderland are still hopeful that he'll be able to play tomorrow, and it definitely isn't as bad as first feared. You might have seen yesterday he was named in the Northern Ireland squad, so clearly, he's not far off being fit. But he hasn't been able to train this week, and Dodds made pretty clear that in ordinary circumstances he wouldn't play. They wouldn't take the risk, but with the situation the team's in at the moment, he may feel he has to do that, so we'll wait and see. My gut instinct is he won't play, but we'll see tomorrow. The slightly sort of light at the end of the tunnel, if you like, is after the international break, the squad should have a bit of a stronger look. So Sunderland will obviously play Cardiff on Good Friday, and then Blackburn Rovers on Easter Monday. Corey Evans, Adji Elise and Bradley Dack should all be back in the squad for those games. They're going to play some under-21s minutes over the international break. They're all back in full training. So providing they come through those under-21s outings, they should be able to come back into the squad. Probably from the bench initially, but it just adds some experience, doesn't it? And some versatility. Luke O'Nien will obviously be back from suspension, so Dodds should have a slightly stronger hand. At the moment, it can't be definitive because we're a little far off. The expectation is Jack Clark and Patrick Roberts probably won't make those 2 games, which is obviously a big blow. But the hope is that they should be able to play the final sort of 5 or 6 games of the run-in. Hopefully, we're not looking over our shoulders and results have turned a little bit by them. But either way, that's obviously going to be a big boost for Dodds, and it's going to give the team a much stronger feel. So that obviously leaves Dodds with quite a few problems tomorrow. If Ballard isn't fit, which we don't think he will be, or it certainly seems unlikely, the back four basically picks itself. Dodds joked that I can't hide the back four from you if Ballard isn't fit, because I've only really got 4 defenders. And that's going to be a really interesting one in terms of it gives a big opportunity to a couple of players. So what he'll probably have to do is move Trey Hume into centre-half to play alongside Leo Yelder. And I imagine Callum Styles will play at left-back and Timothy Pembele will come in at right-back. Pembele obviously hasn't started a game yet in the Championship. He's only made 5 appearances. He suffered a really bad hamstring injury in one of his first training sessions at the club. And since then, he's really struggled to get a look in. I asked Mike Dodds about the reasons for that and where he felt Pembele was, given that he's probably going to be starting the game tomorrow. And to be fair, Dodds said, the main reason why Pembele hasn't featured is because, Trey Human's been so good and so consistent, rather than necessarily it being a knock on Pembele. But he did say that he feels as if the right back has taken quite a bit of time to settle, which is understandable for a young player moving to a new country, an entirely new division. And I think that's probably something we've seen in quite a few areas in the squad. So hopefully he can kind of take that opportunity, but it's a big ask. Yelder has told us in the media before that he does prefer playing at centre-half to left-back, so that shouldn't be an issue in itself. But obviously it's an entirely new partnership with Trey Hume will be out of position. And though Callum Styles has played left-back before, generally he's more of a wing-back, so playing a more defensive role is going to be a challenge for him as well. It's a very, very new look back four, and you never want to be going into games of these importance with so many sort of new partnerships. And I think that raises a few interesting questions about what Dodds does elsewhere in the team and what else he does sort of going further forward. I would be surprised if Pierre Requard can come back into the side in midfield. I think he was obviously rested at Southampton last week. And I also think that Adil Al-Shish probably has to start. I totally understand that Dodds wanted to go with Chris Rigg at Southampton because he played so well against Leicester, but he made pretty clear after the game that it was a close call, and having him pressed again from the bench, Adil Al-Shish should really force his way into the reckoning. In the wide areas with Robertson Clark out, not a huge amount of options. Rigg could play off the right-hand side. That could be a way to get both him and Al-Shish into the team. I'm sure Dodds has considered that. But I think realistically, you're probably looking at Mundle and Barr. Hopefully Mundle can build on his goal against Southampton last week. And the other big decision is obviously up front, isn't it? Because, I asked Mike Dodds about this today in terms of the challenge he's facing up front, and you can read the full quotes on the Sunderland website tomorrow morning, so go and check that out. But he made very, very clear that he's going to pick Louis Hemir at times between now and the end of the season. He felt that at Norwich, while Hemir didn't sort of stand out in his performance, he felt that tactically he'd done what he asked him to do off the ball, and he was sort of pleased with his application and the way he carried that out. At Leicester, he kind of admitted that while he was on the pitch, Sunderland didn't really create any chances for him to thrive. So he made quite clear that he does think, he does want to give Hemir another opportunity, but he needs to pick the right game. And I think in the context of having lost 6 games in a row, I think there's a need to be pragmatic. And in my view, the best player in that striking position this season has been Jobe Bellingham. I don't think that's where Jobe's going to play sort of in his future career. But I think he's been excellent up front when you think back to that West Brom game in particular. Remember against Rotherham earlier in the season. I feel like he is sort of the best player in that role in the here and now. And I think especially when you've got some issues with injuries and suspension at the other end of the pitch, I think there's a big, argument for playing Jobe there. Whether Dodds does it tomorrow, I don't know. I do think he'll change it because I think Mason Burstow had a difficult afternoon at Southampton, and that probably means it's between Hemir and Jobe. And I just think given the significance of the game going into this international break and the losing run, I think Jobe might get the nod. It feels like a really important game, but also quite a difficult one. I think the reality is that having rightly spoken about the impact of injuries and the very difficult fixture list, it almost makes this game a really important one, because off the back of playing 3 teams at the top, there will understandably be an expectation, as there should be, that someone could be a lot more front-footed, be a lot more creative against QPR. The one sort of mitigation is it's a very different QPR side to the one we faced earlier in the season when Sunderland ended up eventually, after a red card, running out very comfortable winners. Their new manager, Marty Cifuentes, has had a really big impact. If you look at the form table, all right, it's not sparkling, but they're not a relegation side by any stretch of the imagination. And one of the things that Dodds has pointed out is that he's had a huge impact in them out of possession. Very difficult team to break down, a much improved team in terms of their defensive structure. So I actually think it's a bit of a challenge for Sunderland this game, given the players they've got out. But I think we would all accept that the run that they've been on just isn't good enough, and it needs to come to an end. And it's really important to do that going into this 2-week break. To like I said at the start of the video, you're not going to turn the mood into one of real positivity, because ultimately, a really promising campaign's kind of gone to waste a little bit. But at least you could sort of breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief with those players coming back after the international break. Hopefully that all goes to plan, and we'll see kind of a different Sunderland. And we'll also be able to sort of judge Mike Dodds, I think, a bit more fairly when he does have a stronger side. Really interesting in his press conference today, he talked about the fact that, we've all discussed it a lot, Sunderland having the younger side in the EFL over the last couple of games, one of the younger sides that's ever been named in Championship history, or certainly in modern Championship history in the last couple of games. And him basically saying that, that isn't what we want to do. We do have a policy of fielding young players, of giving young players opportunities, but I think there is a recognition that, and injuries have obviously and suspension have played a huge part in it, but at the moment it's gone a little too far towards those young players and they need a little bit of help. And he did almost accept that this run of really poor form has shown that there is a little bit of a need for more experience and a bit more depth in the squad, and that's something which I'm kind of taking a little bit of hope from, that maybe this run has shown that moving forward, if Sunderland are going to get out of this division next season, they're going to have a little bit of a tweak, not tear up what they do, because I think we can all see the positives in Dan Neil, Chris Rigg, any number of players you can mention, but I think there is a growing recognition that things are going to have to change slightly moving into the summer as sort of Sunderland pick through what's been a really damaging couple of months. So yeah, let me know in the comments anything that you'd like to see on this channel, any other big things you'd like to see us discuss more regularly, or anything you'd like us to explore and talk about. We'll obviously be back tomorrow after the game with our regular On the Whistle feature. So you can, if you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or come and find us on Twitter, myself, James Copley, or just tweet the Sunderland Echo Sunderland account and leave your questions at full time and we'll get to them. So thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for watching and commenting on the channel and subscribing. Yeah, and we'll be back tomorrow with, fingers crossed, touch wood, everything that we'll be able to talk about for the first time in a long time, 3 Sunderland points, and be looking forward with a little bit of relief and maybe a small amount of positivity, fingers crossed.